the government was going to back down of the entire judges appointment issue, you thought wrong. In fact, Vice President Jagdeep Dhankar has opened up another front against the Supreme Court by saying the basic structure of the constitution can also be amended by the government or the legislature. This comes after the Supreme Court had already slammed the government for making their views public or questioned the judiciary on the judges' appointment issue. Suffice to say, we've got a battle on our hands. But this is an important battle, one that the government should not shy away from. Over the years, questions have been raised over judicial overreach, judgments which effectively enter the domain of the legislature by changing laws itself. There have been questions over how judges appoint themselves, even as the current Collegium system with the SC defense is not born out of the Constitution. There are still questions on whether the Supreme Court was right in scrapping the NJAC bill after it was passed by Parliament. But now it is even beyond that. This is in essence very much a battle of who governs us and who has the right to decide what India will be. This is a fight for the idea of India itself. A fight whether the Constitution is a living document that can be interpreted as and when the judiciary deems fit, or a set of rules that can very much be changed by the legislature, as has been done countless times before, including what has now begun to be recognized as the basic structure. We'll take those questions to our experts from the legal world joining us in just a bit. But first, take a look at how this entire row came about and how it continues to escalate. On October 28 last year, Law Minister Kiran Rijiju opened up a can of worms while speaking to CNN News18, saying that the NJAC, the National Judicial Appointments Council Bill, was a better option than the current Collegium system. He basically re-triggered the debate over how judges should be appointed. Soon after that, the Supreme Court issued a notice to the government over delay in Collegium recommendations. This could be seen as a response to the minister's comments. November 28, Justice Kaul expressed displeasure over the law minister's remarks. But a few days later, Vice President Jagdeep Dhankar entered into the debate when he said in Parliament as part of his speech, remember, he is the chairman in Rajya Sabha, that by scrapping NJAC, the SC compromised parliamentary sovereignty. The very next day, the SC hit back again, saying the Collegium is the law of the land, and it asked the AG, the Attorney General, to advise the government on the legal position. The law minister did not back down. He went on to then blame the Collegium system for high pendency of cases. Now, yesterday, this is the final point as it stands today, the Vice President revealed that he was surprised, quote, at the SC asking AG to advise a constitutional authority, which he is, and that he declined to entertain the AG, adding that he cannot be party to the emasculation of legislature's power. It has certainly escalated this row, to say the least. Let me also break down further everything the VP said yesterday, because he's really taking the fight to the Supreme Court. Attack number 1. Public posturing from judicial platforms is not right, clearly attacking judges. Attack number 2, one-upmanship on judicial platforms is prevalent. Number 3, I cannot be a party to emasculate powers of the legislature, as I just mentioned. Number 4, I have to confine to the sense of propriety, self-respect. Now come the real key parts, which we will debate further. Ultimate power, he said, is with the legislature in India. That's number 5, if we can move forward. Number 6, how can the parliament's sovereignty be compromised? Here, question. Cannot subscribe to the idea that parliament cannot amend basic structure. Now, this has become a new bone of contention. It's almost opening up a new front, not restricted to the NJAC bill alone. He goes on to say, if such limits are imposed, very nature of democracy is in danger, and that's the focus of our debate, if he is correct in saying that. Number 9, he said Parliament's sovereignty, autonomy cannot be compromised. He's clearly giving out a message, judges or no judges, nobody can do that. And finally, he even went on to say the more subtle the incursion, note the words, the more dangerous it is. He's really not holding back his punches. So the big issue we focus on today, 1, was the SC indeed wrong in striking down the Judicial Appointments Bill? And can the basic structure, as the Vice President is mentioning now, be indeed amended by the legislature?
You cannot script in legislature a judgment of the court. उसी भावना में court cannot legislate.
He's probably forgotten his lawyer days, because the law is very clear that the power of judicial review includes the power of the Supreme Court to decide on validity of any amendment or the provision of the Constitution, and to set it aside.
Constitution is bigger than all of us. That's the supreme guiding principle that we need to follow. We follow.
Let's go across to our legal guest joining us. Ujjwal Nikam is Senior Advocate, Supreme Court. Vikas Gupta is lawyer joining us. Also with us, C.B. Pandey, former Justice and Legal Advisor to former Governor in Uttar Pradesh. Mr. Pandey, I want to begin with you. And the free and frank question today is, was it indeed not wrong of the Supreme Court to strike down the Judicial Appointments Bill? Because they struck it down as being unconstitutional. I ask this question because the current Collegium system, many can argue, based on facts, is not constitutional itself. The executive was very much involved in appointing judges before the Collegium system evolved through a series of judgments. And then to strike down the NJAC, was that not wrong to begin with by the Supreme Court?
What's the question? Last. What is the question?
I'm asking you plain and simply, was it not wrong of the Supreme Court? Sir, if you can hear me clearly, was it not wrong of the Supreme Court to strike down the NJAC bill as unconstitutional?
This judicial appointment bill, when it was passed by the Parliament has definitely the earlier system which was being run by, in the case of judicial appointment, particularly of the High Court and Supreme Court judges, that was done by the Judiciary as well as by the Executive.
Yes.
And the system was going on. But however, it was fed by the Supreme Court that whatever the reason may be, I don't go behind those reasons, and whatever the effect of on the appointment of the judges. But for some reasons, it was found that this system is not going well. Therefore, Parliament passed a law where the appointment of judges has to be done by the Executive, at the same time by the judges of the Supreme Court. So the appointment, now the Indian Judicial Appointment Commission was framed under the law, and that was given power to appoint judges. Now the Supreme Court says, and I think why Supreme Court says like this, that was a good system and that has to be followed, because it was the participation of both the Executive as well as Judiciary. But now, through number of the judgments, Supreme Court adopted the view that it's an exclusive power of the Supreme Court to appoint judges, because if the Executive is involved in that matter, it is the independence of Judiciary which is being affected.
But sir, can they do that? The question is very much this: can the courts decide that no, this was not right, even though that was the system and what they've devised is an unconstitutional system?
They only say back because they say that the Constitution is their Constitution has some certain basic structure of the Constitution, and independent of Judiciary is the basic structure of the Constitution. And by this method, which has been involved by the Indian Judicial Appointment Commission, is the method which somehow affect the independence of judiciary. And
no, but I'm going a little bit before the Judicial Appointments Bill, which was passed by Parliament. That's a separate argument. J. Sai Deepak, advocate and author, is also joining us. Let me take this question to Ujjwal Nikam as well. Ujjwal Nikam, as I understand, the Collegium system only came about, that judges appoint judges, in the 1990s. Before that, this system didn't exist. It came about via 3 important judgments. But many can argue, and as the government's argument is, even if it's not saying it openly, but that this system is not what India was supposed to have. In fact, in the discussions when the Constitution was being drafted, The fact that judges will appoint judges was discarded as an idea. So is the Supreme Court not wrong? I'm asking it very bluntly today in insisting that this should be the system.
Shivani, frankly speaking, before 1990, because our constitution says that the president may, with the consultation of the Supreme Court, appoint the judges of the Supreme Court as well as the high courts. So under constitution, the power is vested with the president. Now the word consultation, which is used in the constitution, that has been also interpreted by the Supreme Court in one of the judgment, saying that this consultation means it's a mandatory advice.
But how can that
So
be?
Supreme Court in the judgment has said, no, that is the judgment of the Supreme Court. It is not my comment or interpretation. And therefore, because in Keshwanand Bharati's case,
Yes.
the constitutional bench has decided in the year 1973, the powers of the parliament, so far as to amend the constitution, are restricted. They cannot change the basic structure of the constitution. Now with this idea, the whole controversy cropped up only in the year 2015, when the National Judicial Appointment Commission Act law that was scrapped by the Supreme Court. Now it is most unfortunate, I must fairly concede at the juncture, it is most unfortunate but unnecessary, a wrong tussle is being going on certain aspect. Now how to find out what is the via media to this solution? In fact, the both heads, the constitutional head as well as the judicial head, should have to sit together and find out, because the contention of the government is that there should be a transparency. Transparency is a backbone in the democracy country. Now therefore, if the judges are appointing the judges, no, I'm not saying in a blanket way, but there are the cases wherein some criticism has happened, some criticism has been contended, and therefore in order to have the fair judiciary, there is no question of the parliament power is to be compromised or not to be compromised, or who is the supreme, whether parliament is supreme or judicial. I think that is an unnecessary debate. So according to me, this tussle must be resolved with certain things. But now if the vice president has made a public comment, and earlier also our preamble of the constitution says that we the people of the India, means according to the government the parliament is supreme. So I personally feel that if we had to make a full concrete proof system, so that there should not be any ray of any doubt in the mind of the common man how this judge has been appointed.
Yeah.
So there should be a transparency even in the this appointment, whatever the
No, fair enough, and I don't think it is anybody's contention
Collegium
that the
system.
executive should have complete sway over it, because I think that also is a system that can lead to certain questions cropping up. But you know, I want to take this forward to the basic structure argument now. J-Sai Deepak is also joining us. This whole doctrine of basic structure has also evolved through judgments, quite like the Collegium system. And as Ujjwal Nikam, your senior colleague, very rightly pointed out, the word consultation was interpreted by the courts. Now, fundamentally, several people, J-Sai Deepak, can have a problem, but that this is a very convenient interpretation that happens 40 years after the constitution is adopted, and suddenly you change everything. Suddenly you give more powers to yourself. Is the government not right in fighting this? Because the government is saying you usurped our powers.
Right. So, Shivani, thank you for giving me an opportunity to share space with Mr. Ujjwal Nikam. It's fascinating to share space with such a senior and established colleague of mine, a senior colleague. Now, on the question, so let's first come to the question of legality before desirability. Until 1981, there was a particular interpretation with respect to this particular provision of the Constitution. And whenever discussion happens or takes place on this particular issue, usually we are told that the circumstances prevalent around that particular period necessitated this particular interpretation.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, in a recent conversation on a legal platform, this was the exact reasoning given by quite a few people. Therefore, the admission here is political circumstances can lead to a different interpretation being given to the Constitution to the extent that the judiciary or a particular organ of the state can appropriate to itself the right to appoint its own people.
Mm-hmm.
We are not asking for executive oversight here. We are not asking for parliamentary oversight here. And when I say we, I mean the people of the country, the elected, let's say the electorate of this particular country, because I don't hold, let's say, brief for any particular organization or any particular government or dispensation here. But the point is, these ego battles between the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary can go on till the cows come home for all I care. But don't we as a people have the right to ask this question? Since when did this become part of the social contract under the Constitution that a particular organ can appropriate to itself the right to appoint its head and its own members?
Exactly.
How is this fair? Was this even envisaged as part of the Constitution? Now, the independence of the judiciary is not contingent on the collegium system being preserved as some kind of a let's say, as a sanctum sanctorum of the judiciary, as something that is the inner spot of the judiciary which can never be touched under any circumstances. That I don't think is even needed. It's surprising that whenever we discuss these issues, we don't talk about accountability as well as, let's say, from the perspective of both fiscal accountability as well as appointment related accountability together. I'll give you a very simple example. I'm not going to make the argument that over the last 30 or 35 years, ever since this particular system since 1981 has been in force, it has turned out people or it has offered choices which are not particularly great. I don't think that's the argument to be made.
Okay.
If the argument is constitutional and the argument is legal, then the question is, was this envisaged by the founding framers of the Constitution? If not, can the judiciary upset the original intent of the framers of the Constitution by coming out with its own interpretation, by taking recourse to the fact that it happens to be the interpretative wing of the state?
Precisely.
That is the seriously problematic aspect, where an inherent power of the institution is brought to bear to preserve or to take more space for the institution at the expense of constitutional boundaries and at the expense of the right of the people to participate in this particular process.
Absolutely.
And allow me to also make the submission that gradually what this has done is that the direct impact of the collegium system is the gradual encroachment of legislative as well as executive space by the judiciary in the name of judicial activism, which I think has gone unchecked for quite some time and has gone to the other end of the spectrum. There needs to be greater balance here. Every institution needs to respect the space in the terms of other institutions in a democracy. That's how it works. We have not elected a particular organ such as the judiciary. We have elected the executive, and therefore it's the parliament which comprises of the executive. So we would want those people to take decisions here on quite a few aspects.
Yes,
I'll give you a direct example.
Especially when it
on the
comes to
aspect of
making
COVID
laws.
policy. Correct. On making laws, and even when it comes to COVID policy, we saw the Supreme Court take over the entire issue altogether on its own. Since when did the judicial arm of this government have, or of the state, have the power to even craft COVID policies?
Yeah. No, fair enough. Although in some cases they've restrained themselves also. For example, recently in the demonetization verdict, they said that we cannot enter this domain of economic policies. The elected government has to be allowed to do so. So that's welcome. So, there has been, as I mentioned at the start of the show, these debates, there have been judgments where entire laws have been struck down. Now, as an unelected pillar of democracy, you cannot strike down laws because that's, as a citizen, my right is to elect a government and that government makes laws. And if I don't like them, I can vote them out of power. That's fundamental to us. But I want to bring in Vikas Gupta also. Vikas Gupta, now the issue has also moved to the basic structure. As I was mentioning, the collegium system and the basic structure, the whole doctrine of basic structure also is evolving through judgments. Now, while it may be argued that this doctrine prevents legislative excesses and you need some sort of a balance to that, but another thought can also be that the Constitution must change according to times as it has already been changing, and thus that should also include what has become to be known as basic structure. There was no basic structure, frankly. The Constitution didn't have a basic structure. The judges have over the years defined what a basic structure is, and they've defined that you can't touch this. But should it be so?
Shivani, as time changes, you see the brute majority in the parliamentary part of democracy, and which can be misused by the executive of the day. So to protect the basic structure of the constitution, it time and again it evolves as per the condition of the day, as per the situation of the day. What you saw during the emergency and what you see today, now unnecessary controversy has been rigged up by a constitutional authority, by the vice president, embarking upon, probably I would say that the government is testing the waters first through the shoulders of the law minister and now through the vice president, and maybe a new avatar of the NJAC may be introduced, maybe not in a similar name but in a different fashion, in a different way, because the government wants to take away the independence of the judiciary, wants to control the appointment of the judges, so that
But that used to be the case. That used to be the case, Vikas Gupta. That's what the government was mandated to do by our constitution makers. What's wrong with that?
That's precisely what I'm saying, that if this last bastion of democracy also falls, then nothing remains.
But you're saying that, I find that a politically colored remark. Governments will come and go, but the powers of the executive shall remain and the legislature should remain.
That's precisely, Shivani, what I'm saying is that the independence of the judiciary must be preserved at any cost. That is extremely important for democracy to sustain in this country. If we allow judiciary to fall apart by introducing NJAC or some similar kind of laws which gives unlimited powers to the executive to appoint judges, then this last bastion would
unlimited powers.
I don't think anybody is vouching for unlimited powers to the executive. I think it will be very much a joint effort, as it should be. Also, let me remind you, the NJAC had all party support. Today, the Congress may sing a different tune. It was very much in favor of the executive role in appointment of judges. Ujjwal Nikam, I want to bring you in.
As far as all the parties are concerned, of course, I would say that all the parties ganged up together to pass this bill in Parliament.
Ganged up together. Okay, interesting choice of words. So you are saying the Supreme Court is being, the parties are ganging up against the Supreme Court. Okay, I want to bring in Ujjwal Nikam back into this debate. Ujjwal Nikam, where do you stand on the so-called basic structure question? The VP has thrown open this debate, that there is no concept of this basic structure, and he doesn't believe that quote-unquote basic structure cannot be changed by the elected government of the day or the legislature of the day.
Shivani, I already said, even under the constitution, the government has power to appoint the judges, either the Supreme Court or even the High Court. Now, this collegium system that has been created inbuilt body by the Supreme Court itself. To be very honest with you and to the viewers also, that you see, there are the cases which had occurred also, which had seen by the public also, that collegium system has also drawbacks.
Yeah.
It is not a foolproof system. So it would be too premature to anticipate that even if the power goes to NGA, there will be a government interference. How can we? There are the checks and the counter checks. I have seen the draft of the National Judicial Appointment Commission. You see, it is the all-party, political party. Even the Supreme Court judges are also the members of that party, of that commission, appointment commission. So, I think this will be a wrong apprehension to be kept in mind. The independence of the judiciary will go away if this new legislation be brought. In fact, the government should consider very seriously on what counts the Supreme Court has struck down this law, whether it is change the constitution, or whether it changes the basic structure, and if not, then what other is the solution to be bring
I'll come
in the
to the solutions in just a bit, but you did refer that this has to be a consultative process. Instead of fighting and butting heads, they should come together, sit together and find a solution. We'd all prefer that. Sai Deepak, where do you stand on the question of the basic structure? Is there something called a basic structure that cannot be touched by the legislature?
See, the legitimate concern that the constitution cannot be rendered a puppet in the hands of any government, whether it's a majority government or a coalition government, is a legitimate concern. Now, therefore, it's certainly I would say, a nuanced process where you try and find out what are the features of the constitution which are supposed to withstand the exercise of a brutal majority government with respect to the powers of amendment. Those are questions that I think can be considered. But you see, the constitutions which form the basis for the basic structure doctrine being evolved by the Indian Supreme Court were constitutions where there was some hint of a basic feature or a basic structure. Now, whether such a thing was even envisaged as part of this particular country's constitution is, I would still say, an open question.
Okay.
Most of us seem to be answering this question more from the perspective of necessity as opposed to validity. As long as necessity remains the subject of the discussion when it comes to matters such as this, it's always possible for us to cite some kind of political imperative or constitutional imperative. But constitutional validity, legality, and legitimacy is a very different question altogether, where you have to consult only two aspects. One, does the language of the constitution lend itself to the formulation of a basic structure doctrine? Two, does the history of the drafting of the constitution lend itself to the crafting of such a doctrine? These are the only two questions. Political necessities and exigencies can be thrown out of the window when it comes to these kind of questions.
And what is your feeling today on both of these test points?
See, my feeling is that India seems to be constantly looking to the UK or the US when it comes to judgments. I've said this before. The United Kingdom follows the Judicial Appointments Commission, and today nobody can say that the United Kingdom Supreme Court or the UK Judiciary suffers from lack of independence. That does not seem to be the case. Second, nobody is batting for complete overhaul to the extent that there is untrammeled power given either to the Parliament or the legislature or the executive. We are basically saying, let there be some kind of stakeholdership of other arms of the state as well, so that the elected will of the people or the will of the people also translates to some kind of inputs. So this is the very limited suggestion being made. Even the NJAC was not giving anybody unlimited powers.
Yes.
So I don't know where these bogies are being coming. I mean, where are they being brought up from? I don't see any basis for this in the previous NJAC, nor has anybody given the hint that despite the previous NJAC being struck down, the government has any intentions of coming out with any legislation that gives untrammeled power to the legislature or the executive. I think these are red herrings. We might as well focus on sane arguments in terms of coming out with a consultative process towards the resolution of the issue. I am not interested in puffing up the ego of any particular organ at the expense of the other. As a citizen of this country and as a practicing constitutional lawyer, I am interested in ensuring that no particular organ becomes a law unto itself.
Exactly. I think that's the biggest fear. And I also feel that we are almost making brute majority or majority a bad thing.
Correct.
Now, if the public comes together and elects an overwhelmingly majority government, doesn't mean you can take away the right of that government by just saying, oh, this is brute majority. This is fear-mongering and paranoia, frankly. You cannot take that away just because the government is powerful vis-a-vis the numbers.
Plus I think it's a condescending argument to make, because we are being told that people don't know what is good for them, and therefore a brute majority cannot be allowed to have a sway. So therefore, let us give more powers to the Supreme Court, because the Supreme Court knows better than the country.
No, I think this is the gatekeepers.
Mandate of the Constitution.
This is the gatekeepers' mentality, that we must have gatekeepers over the masses who elect the legislature and the executive. I'll give a final 30 seconds to all of our guests. I begin with C.B. Pandey one more time. So what do you think should ideally happen now? It is clear the government, the executive, the legislature and the judiciary is not seeing eye to eye. What would you like to see happen?
My point of view that both must cooperate in making appointment of judges. Because the executive is also a responsible body. You cannot say that the executive is such a responsible that they cannot appoint judges. At the same time, judges should have to be given upper hand, so they should examine the person who are they appointed by them, that their competence, their ability, and all that, their integrity. Because the judges are in better position to know all these things. Executive have no such direct idea of the persons who are to be appointed as judge. So therefore, both should cooperate, and they should find out who are the best judges, who are the honest judges, and who can perform best as a judge. Point is, if you give this entire power to the executive and very limited power to the judiciary, it has been experienced that we are not getting very good judges.
No, that system could become lopsided for sure, and I think it should be equal power. Nobody is
if they
batting for
demand-
lopsided power to the executive. Nobody is batting for that. There should be checks and balances. Vikas Gupta, 30 seconds, please.
Yeah, I certainly agree on a limited point that there should be transparency in appointment of the judges by the Collegium. Definitely, public must know that who all are appointed and what are the credentials of the lawyers who are appointed as judges. But under no circumstances, executive be given a clean power to appoint judges. That will ruin the democracy of this country. And more importantly, as one of the panelists said, that it is a bogey. It is not. Out of the 6 members, 1 was the law minister and 2 appointed by the government of India. Those 3 members would have played havoc had NJAC would have come into force.
Okay, you feel that there should be a slightly different structure, not one that gives anyone the majority vote. Ujjwal Nikam, final word to you. Ideally, we would like this to be settled more amicably, but I think this is a healthy debate for the country to have at large too. A lot of people, ordinary citizens, even the younger generation should know what we are debating, and I think it's an interesting debate.
Yes. Shivani, frankly speaking, while striking down the National Judicial Appointment Commission law, the Supreme Court has observed that it would change the basic structure. Now, in fact, the government again should reconsider the entire judgment in its proper spirit and should find out how this can be avoided so that it can be amicably settled. But I am of the opinion that there should be a transparency in appointing the judges.
Yeah.
The public at large should have a legal right, fundamental right to know which type of judge is going to be appointed and what is the background and etc. And therefore, I think there should be some dialogue between the Supreme Court and the Parliament.
All right. I think one is for healthy debate, and I think virtually everyone agrees that something needs to be done about the Collegium system. That alone, as it is also not working. There needs to be greater transparency and accountability brought in. I really do thank all of our jurists and eminent legal minds joining us. That was a very nice debate. And let's see where this goes. But I have to shift attention to our second big story we're discussing today. Bihar Education Minister Chandrasekhar has stoked a massive row after he condemned Ramcharitmanas, Tulsidasa's poem based on Ramayana. The sitting minister said Ramcharitmanas spreads hatred and equated it to Manusmriti, which is itself a controversial text. The opposition has launched an all-out attack on the Nitish Kumar-led government, saying this is an attack on Sanatan Dharma itself and the faith of Hindus in a bid to get votes. On being asked about this statement, Bihar Chief Minister just said he's not aware of it. Take a look at what the Bihar minister said, and mind you, he's a sitting minister, and that too the education minister in the state. The minister said Ramcharitmanas and Manusmriti both spread hatred. Strong words. He went on to say that Ramcharitmanas talks against the education of Dalits, backwards and women, and therefore Ramcharitmanas should also be burnt like Manusmriti. No surprises, this comment has not gone down very well, but the big issue that we're debating is Hinduism not an easy target, even for elected representatives who are supposed to be secular, who often try to shy away from religious comments? Because the simple touchstone is, will such a comment ever be made about the text of any other religion in India by an elected representative, and will that be condemned or condoned?
हमारे देश को समाज को नफरत मारती है। एक युग में मनुस्मृति, दूसरे युग में रामचरितमानस और तीसरे युग में गुरु गोवलकर का बंच ऑफ थॉट, ये दुनिया को नफरत, हमारे देश को समाज को नफरत में बांटती है।
शिक्षा मंत्री ने बोला है कि ये नफरत होने वाला ग्रंथ है।
हमको पता नहीं है, हम पूछ लेंगे उनसे।
जिस मंत्री ने इस बात को कहा है वो अभिज्ञ है, अज्ञानी मंत्री है। माफी मांगना चाहिए, देशवासियों से माफी मांगनी चाहिए।
ऐसे डॉक्टर चंद्रशेखर को अविलंब शिक्षा मंत्री के पद से बर्खास्त कर देना चाहिए। उनको 1 मिनट भी बने रहने का अधिकार नहीं है। ये तो समाज में नफरत पैदा कर रहे हैं।
I'm joined by Guru Prakash Paswan, BJP National Spokesperson, Mayank Sinha, who's a JDU leader, Sadhvi Jaya Bharti, Hindu scholar, is also joining us. Mayank Sinha, I'll ask you the basic question that's coming up in everybody's mind. It is not my contention that a religious text or doctrine or thought process should not be questioned. सवाल पूछना हमारे कल्चर में है, चाहे वो रिलीजन हो या कुछ भी हो. लेकिन पॉलिटिशियंस जब ये सवाल उठाते हैं तो एक क्वेश्चन जरूर आता है कि क्या वो किसी और धर्म के बारे में ये सवाल उठाएंगे, क्या किसी और धर्म के बारे में इस लैंग्वेज में बात करेंगे जो आपके बिहार के एजुकेशन मिनिस्टर ने की है.
देखिए, कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन से ऊपर कोई नहीं, संविधान से ऊपर. आर्टिकल 19 जो हमारा है वो कोई धर्म को, किसी भी धर्म के खिलाफ हमको आज़ादी नहीं देता बोलने की. तो हम लोग इस बयान का बिल्कुल समर्थन नहीं करते हैं. इस तरह के बयान का जनता दल यूनाइटेड बिल्कुल समर्थन नहीं करती है. और हम लोग किसी व्यक्ति को जात में, धर्म में बांटकर राजनीति करना पसंद नहीं करते हैं. और किसी धर्म को नीचा दिखाकर हम लोग इस तरह की राजनीति पसंद नहीं करते हैं. हम लोग इस टोटल जो उनका बयान है उसका जनता दल यूनाइटेड समर्थन नहीं करती.
तो सवाल तो ये उठ रहा है कि आप फिर इनको मंत्री को हटा क्यों नहीं देते हैं?
देखिए, ये राष्ट्रीय जनता दल के लोग बेहतर बता सकते हैं. आप उनसे बात कीजिए, उनके कोटे से मंत्री हैं और उस पर वही बता सकते हैं कि
चीफ मिनिस्टर तो आपके हैं ना.
गया है. नहीं तो माननीय मुख्यमंत्री जी समाधान यात्रा पे निकले हुए हैं. उन्होंने बोला है कि हम इस बयान को देख रहे हैं और उनसे स्पष्टीकरण पूछेंगे कि किस संदर्भ में उन्होंने ये बयान दिया है, किस बात को लेके दिया है.
तो यही तो प्रॉब्लम है. लेट मी ब्रिंग इन गुरु प्रकाश. दिस इज फंडामेंटली द प्रॉब्लम. नो, इमेजिन इफ दिस स्टेटमेंट वाज मेड अगेंस्ट एनी अदर रिलीजियस टेक्स्ट इन इंडिया, एनी ऑफ द अदर रिलीजन्स इन इंडिया. कितना बवाल हो गया होता अभी तक. Will the chief minister still be saying कि देखते हैं किस कॉन्टेक्स्ट में बोला है, किस संदर्भ में बोला है, जानकारी लेंगे फिर डिसाइड करेंगे?
No, Shivani, thank you so much for bringing this issue. I was patiently listening to the JDU spokesperson. At some level, I agree with him कि कम से कम उन्होंने RJD के इस मिनिस्टर के साथ, आप उनके साथ खड़े नहीं हैं, आपने उनका विरोध किया, हम इस बात का स्वागत करते हैं. लेकिन संदर्भ कोई भी हो, whatever be the context, who has given you the right to insult the sentiments of more than 80 crore Hindus? In the defense of context, संदर्भ के पीछे छिपना चाहते हैं क्या आप लोग? ये आपकी सरकार है. Who is accountable? Who is responsible for insulting 80 crore Hindus? I want to ask you tonight. आप बताइए, क्या कह रहे थे ये मंत्री? दलित, पिछड़े, इनके विरोध में है. आपको बताना चाहता हूं मैं, this रामायण was authored by a Dalit, महर्षि वाल्मीकि. आपने महर्षि वाल्मीकि को अपमानित किया है. आपने महर्षि वाल्मीकि के करोड़ों लोगों को अपमानित किया है. और खास करके हम बिहार के लोग. शिवानी, दिस इज द लैंड ऑफ सीता. ये सीता की भूमि है, जनक की कर्म भूमि है. सीता की भूमि से शिक्षा मंत्री का इस प्रकार का शर्मनाक बयान आना, ये हम सब बिहारियों को शर्मसार किया है. पॉलिटिक्स के बियॉन्ड में जाके बोलना चाहता हूं, नीतीश कुमार जी, इफ यू हैव इवन एन आउंस ऑफ इंटेग्रिटी, थोड़ी बहुत भी संवेदनशीलता यदि आप में बची हुई है, तो आप अविलंब, विदाउट एनी डिले, यू मस्ट send the resignation of this education minister who is no longer worthy of being the education minister.
No, if you really wanted to take a stance, Mayank Sinha, if you really wanted to take a stance, you should have, acted upon this minister. Short of action, it will be believed that you are going soft on him. You just want the story to get out of headlines. मामला रफा दफा हो जाएगा, मामला सेटल हो जाएगा और मंत्री अपनी पोजीशन पे बने रहेंगे. अगर आप वाकई में भी ये मानते हैं कि इन्होंने जो बोला गलत बोला है, तो आपकी सरकार की छवि खराब हो रही है ना, चीफ मिनिस्टर की छवि खराब हो रही है. आप एक्शन क्यों नहीं लेते? अदरवाइज तो आप ये एक्सेप्ट कर रहे हैं कि चीफ मिनिस्टर बहुत वीक चीफ मिनिस्टर है. जो सब लोग कहते हैं कि आरजेडी सरकार चला रही है, वही हो रहा है फिर.
नहीं, ये जो भी बात बोलते हैं वो बिल्कुल गलत बोलते हैं. और हमने आपको पहले ही बोला कि माननीय मुख्यमंत्री जी कभी भी और हमारी पार्टी कभी भी किसी दूसरे लोगों का अपमान करती नहीं है, किसी भी धर्म का अपमान नहीं करती है. और हम लोग इस हमेशा संविधान के साथ और न्याय के साथ विकास करने की बात करते हुए विकास करते हुए आए हैं. चाहे हम भारतीय जनता पार्टी के साथ सरकार में थे और भारतीय जनता पार्टी के साथ हमने लंबे समय से सरकार
सर, यहाँ विकास की बात नहीं हो रही है. विकास की बात नहीं हो रही है. प्लीज आप विकास ये ना, आप जो रट कर आए हैं ना, ये स्टेटमेंट मत दीजिए. उन्होंने जो सवाल पूछा है, आप लोगों के लिए हिंदू इजी टारगेट है. आप जब चाहें हिंदुओं का अपमान करें. और बात मेरे व्यक्तिगत अपमान की नहीं है. आप मेरा अपमान करके चले जाएंगे, चलेगा. आप मेरे इष्ट का अपमान करेंगे उसके लिए आपको जवाब देना पड़ेगा। प्लीज ये 1 मिनट आप ना शिवानी, दिस वेरी समथिंग यू स्टार्टेड रियली इजी, वेरी important कि had this has been said about any other religion, कितना बवाल हो जाता। You use the word बवाल। ये हिंदू हैं जो रामचरितमानस के अनुयायी हैं, और वो इतने होने के बाद भी जो उनके अंदर सहिष्णुता है वो हम चुप बैठे हैं। और अगर सच में रामचरितमानस एक बांटने वाला या एक समाज में हिंसा पैदा करने वाला ग्रंथ होता तो आज इनके ऐसे स्टेटमेंट के बाद हिंसा सड़क पर दिख रही होती। तो आपने जो कहा, पहली चीज तो ये हमने विकास किया, यहाँ विकास और राजनीतिक बात नहीं हो रही है। आपने बोला कि वो समाधान यात्रा पे गए हैं। अगर समाधान यात्रा पे ये बोल रहे हैं तो समस्या यात्रा क्या होगी? समस्या यात्रा तो बहुत गंभीर निकालेंगे वो।
अच्छा, मैं एक सेकंड, लेट मी इंटरवीन। आई वांट एवरीवन टू बी हर्ड सेपरेटली एंड स्पीक नॉट स्पीक ओवर ईच अदर। एक सेकंड मयंक सिन्हा, आई गिव यू मोर टाइम। साध्वी भारती, मैं आपसे ये भी पूछना चाहती हूँ, the comments that one second Mayank Sinha, please hold on. Mayank Sinha, I will come back to you. Sadhvi Bharti, the comment that the minister has made, the criticism that he has done of Ramcharitmanas, आप उस पे क्या बोलेंगे? कि उन्होंने बोला कि ये दलितों के खिलाफ है, बैकवर्ड्स के खिलाफ है, महिलाओं के खिलाफ है, उन्होंने इसको मनुस्मृति से कंपेयर किया है।
It's an irony, Shivani, it's an irony कि the person, the so-called education minister, has such shallow knowledge of plain Hindi or plain bhasha of Awadhi. It says, जिस चीज को उन्होंने कोट किया है अधम वाली बात को, तो कहा उसमें लिखा है रामचरितमानस में कि जब जब होए धर्म की हानि बाढ़े ही अधम असुर अभिमानी, तब तब इष्टरे विविध शरीरा हर ही सज्जन पीरा। कि वो उसमें अधम की, अगर मैं इनसे पूछूं कि अधम कौन था, दुर्योधन अधम था। दुर्योधन was an अधम। Adham is what? A dhurt, a person who actually gives pain to other people. And he says the person who is such a person with such cruel instincts has no right on education or learning, because such people put their knowledge to a wrong use and, pain people. So it is like, even they say that the knowledge is always beneficial when it is in the hand of a virtuous person. That's what's the context of that is saying. Okay. And he is an education minister who cannot understand a simple statement. What exactly is it inferring? And I want to go ahead and ask him question that he said this grantha, this scripture is the most this or whatever words that he has used. Has he read all the scriptures of all religious sects across the world? And how, if he has gone through every text, how did he single out Hindu scriptures, slamming my scriptures, disrespecting my scriptures? And he has not said a word about scriptures which say you can go ahead and kill disbelievers, you can behead the people who are homosexuals, you should kill them, you should burn them in fire, you should throw them from a higher building. There are scriptures who say all this. There are scriptures who say don't let a non-believer live. You have been given sword by your Almighty, do that. This gentleman has never said anything about that scripture because he knows that if he doesn't have guts, he doesn't have the spine to stand by his statement, he would not be living to see the next day.
No, that's fundamentally the issue here.
I did not.
Fundamentally,
listen,
the issue
Shivani,
here, Guru Paswan, is exactly this.
Easy.
Whether you are an intellectual, whether you are an educationist, whether you are a politician, in this case, even if you are a sitting minister, it's very easy to abuse the faith of Hindus in India, but you wouldn't touch even genuine criticism. I'm not, first of all, I am not in favor that there should not be criticism. Let there be criticism. That's our culture. But then it should apply equally to all.
Shivani,
we know, Sakiji, ek second, we know, Guru Prakash, that in India, the very same people who berate Hinduism and Hindu texts will come out and say, don't attack any religion.
Yes.
Don't question any religion.
Yes.
Even in the questionable aspects. Guru Prakash.
No, certainly, Shivani, we need to understand the pathological hatred Rashtriya Janata Dal has for Hindus. It is the same political party whose leader, Mr. Lalu Prasad Yadav, once gave a call for Narsanghar. He said, "Bura bal saaf karo." So this political party is doing nothing but exploiting the fault lines of our society. But they have done nothing for the backward and the marginalized. When it comes to sharing of power, they cannot go beyond their family members. It has to be understood. And the understanding between the RJD and the JDU and the Congress party, what are they doing? Who is answerable? Who is responsible? Mr. Chandrasekhar can no longer continue as education minister even for one single minute. The way he has berated Hindus, he has hurt the sentiments of Hindus across the country, across the world. Who is responsible for that? The ruling party, the JDU, cannot run away by saying that it's a different political party. हमारी जिम्मेवारी नहीं है. अरे जिम्मेवारी किसकी है? आप मुख्यमंत्री हैं और हमारे संविधान में ये मेंशन है कि मुख्यमंत्री के अंतर्गत काउंसिल ऑफ मिनिस्टर्स होता है. आपकी काउंसिल ऑफ मिनिस्टर, आपके मंत्री परिषद के वो सदस्य हैं. क्या ये सरकार का विधिवत स्टैंड है? क्या बिहार की सरकार जो महागठबंधन की है वो हिंदुओं के खिलाफ में है?
Well, if they don't take any action, then that's tacit support of this statement. Mayank Sinha, I'll give you the final 30 seconds. Ultimately, the buck stops with the chief minister. आप अपना ये पल्ला ये बोल के नहीं झाड़ सकते कि हमारी पार्टी का मिनिस्टर नहीं है.
आपकी सरकार का मिनिस्टर है.
मिनिस्टर नहीं. मैंने ये बोला था कि जो राष्ट्रीय जनता दल के लोग बता पाएंगे कि किस संदर्भ में उन्हें बोला है. और हमारी सरकार, हमारे मुख्यमंत्री, उन्होंने आज बोला है कि हम जानकारी लेंगे और उसके बाद जो भी उचित कार्रवाई होगी होगी. संविधान से बढ़कर कोई नहीं है और संविधान के दायरे में ही रह के किसी व्यक्ति को किसी बात को बोलना चाहिए. और हम लोग जरूर आपको आश्वस्त करते हैं CNN 18 न्यूज चैनल को कि जरूर कुछ अच्छा कार्रवाई होगा और आपको आगे की सूचना मिल जाए.
Well, if you act, that is to your credit. If you don't act, I think the message will also be very clear. What I am finding most curious in this is the question of context. संदर्भ का जो सवाल उठा रहे हैं, ये सिर्फ हिंदू आस्था में क्यों संदर्भ की बात आ जाती है कि आपको कंटेक्चुअलाइज करना है कि भैया क्यों कहा, कैसे कहा, किस वजह से कहा. ये जो कॉन्टेक्चुअलाइजेशन है वो किसी और रिलीजन के सेंटिमेंट्स में आता ही नहीं है. तब कॉन्टेक्स्ट नहीं देखते लोग. And that is fundamentally the hypocrisy involved here. And my aim was to outline the hypocrisy. I've run out of time. I do thank all of our guests for joining us. Have to slip it into a very short break. On the other side, we have a special report for you on how messaging services are being used to dupe and scam ordinary people. It's a CNN News 18 investigation. Stay tuned for that.
and promised 15 lakh रुपए आ जाएंगे सबके अकाउंट में, मुझे प्रधानमंत्री बना दो. It was nothing more than a jumla.
Charan Singh Sapra, let me start by asking you, what is your contention or what is your problem with what Mr. Bhagwat has said? He has said that no one should have a supremacist mindset if you're living in a land of equals, in a land where Article 15 says that everyone is equal before the law. The Constitution guarantees that. Why should anyone have a supremacist mindset? What is wrong in what he said?
See, Zaka, let me speak one line in Hindi and thereafter I will carry on. It's like, kahin pe nigahein, kahin pe nishana. Actually, the Mahabharata of 2024 has started, it seems. And Mohan Bhagwat and RSS wants people to believe that they are setting the narrative for the same. Now, let me also remind you, the very leaders of RSS, they have been talking that RSS is a cultural organization or it's a social organization. Then why are they indulging into the majoritarian and authoritarian rule or authoritarian politics or authoritarian statements? Now you also see the chronology of things what are happening. The BJP leader from Karnataka, he says we will contest elections on the plank of love jihad. Pragya Thakur says she gives a call to Hindus to sharpen the knives. Amit Shah, he declares the date of Ayodhya temple, 1st January. And thereafter, Mohan Bhagwat's statement, which clearly shows the majoritarian or the authoritarian rule which BJP is doing. So there is a chronology to everything.
No, and by saying that no one should have a supremacist mindset, how is it authoritarian, I want to know, and how is it majoritarian? And secondly, no one is saying that just because, Amit Shah or Nalin Katil or Mohan Bhagwat is raising one set of issues, that is going to be the dominant issues for 2024. You are well within your right to raise issues that matter, that you think matter to the people, whether it is price rise or joblessness or whatever it is. Nobody is stopping you from doing that.
Yes, Zaka, that's why I said kahin pe nigahein, kahin pe nishana. And the real issues of concern for the people of India are the inflation, price rise, the rising unemployment, the trade deficit, the closure of MSMEs, or the depreciation of Indian rupee.
So, Sabra Sahib, you raise that. You are well within your right to raise that. Who is stopping you from raising that?
Let me complete, na Zaka.
Hanji.
Zaka, let me complete, please. If you have called me, listen to me. So that's what I'm saying, that BJP or RSS, they are not interested in answering these questions which people are asking.
Okay.
They just want to hide behind the politics of polarization. They want to hide behind the shield of, divisive politics, and they just want to change the narrative of the country.
They are not worried about the poor people of this country. Shubrashta, this is what Mr. Bhagwat said. There is no harm to Muslims living in India, living today in Bharat. If they wish to stick to their faith, they can. If they want to return to the faith of their ancestors, they may. It is entirely their choice. There is no such stubbornness. Islam has nothing to fear. To which politicians like Mr. Owaisi have said that they don't need Mr. Bhagwat's permission to stay in India. Indian Muslims have decided to stay on in India because at the time of partition, their ancestors decided that they will live in a country where all religions are treated equal. They did not want to go to an Islamic republic like Pakistan. And that is not because of the benevolence of Mr. Bhagwat or the RSS.
Right. Thank you, Zaka. Zaka, I think what Mr. Owaisi says has always been about mismeasuring contexts and mismeasuring things which are no longer in public currency. For example, I don't think when Mr. Bhagwat was talking today, he spoke anything about citizenship at all. So the questions that Mr. Owaisi are raising are far-fetched, and actually these are questions which will create two larger divisions in society. Let's listen closely to what Mr. Bhagwat said. He is talking about a fundamental idea of way of life in India. He's talking about, and I don't want to go into details of what Hindutva means and all of that. I don't think there should be a problem with it. See, Zaka, from 1980s onwards, ever since Martin Kramer coined the term political Islam and wrote books and subsequent articles about it, it has sparked a debate world over on the supranational nature of political Islam. Now, this is for if people believe in Islamic academics taking center stage in Indian politics today, then I think they need to make themselves clear what is the version of Islam that they want to follow. Do they believe in nationalism? Do they have supranational ambitions? These are questions that will be confronted
again,
with.
Shubrashta,
I disagree with Mr. Sapra when he says...
Shubrashta, by saying that, you are again saying that Muslims of India need to prove their nationalism. Why? They are as much Indian citizens as you are or I am or anyone else is.
I don't want to be misconstrued, Zaka, so allow me to explain myself in 30 more seconds. No, I am not saying that Muslims need to prove their nationalism at all. I am just saying that in a vitiated atmosphere, when a large section of Muslim majority feels that they are maybe insecure in the Indian soil, or maybe the new government is trying to clamp down upon them, I think the academics in the Muslim world need to come together and identify for the larger benefit of the public what their views on nationalism is. It doesn't make them anything less national. It doesn't make them less national.
Okay.
It doesn't make them less patriotic. For sure, I mean, people like us who have grown up listening to stories of partition, we have known that if there was a Muhammad Ali Jinnah, there was a Maulana Abul Kalam Azad who absolutely detested, abhorred partition and took cudgels with Nehru against that.
Dr. Nalin Mehta,
there's no question, there's no question.
This mother's tears are a testament of how the dark world of online frauds has gripped India. Her 19-year-old boy Hardik died by suicide because of an online fraud of 1 lakh rupees.
मैं घर आती हूँ तो 3:20 पे फिर मुझे उसका कॉल आता है कि मम्मी खाना बना लेना, मैं थोड़ी देर में आ जाऊँगा। लेकिन फिर 1 घंटे बाद उसी के फ़ोन से फ़ोन आता है कि आप अपने बेटे को देखने आ जाइए अस्पताल में, फ्लोरेंस हॉस्पिटल में। जब हम वहाँ जाकर देखते हैं तो हमें उसकी बॉडी दिखा दी जाती है कि आपके बेटे में अब कुछ नहीं है। पुलिस कह रही है कि उसने सुसाइड किया। उसने सुसाइड नहीं किया है। वो सुसाइड कर ही नहीं सकता था। जो बच्चा ऊंचाई में देखने से डरता था वो 19वीं मंजिल से कैसे गिरकर सुसाइड कर सकता है? ये सुसाइड नहीं है, उसकी हत्या की गई है।
The fraudsters have a new modus operandi to extract money from their victims. In the post-COVID world, cryptos became a popular asset class amongst the youth to make a quick buck. And this is exactly how fraudsters are preying on the gullible and ill-informed. CNN News 18 spoke to several victims of this heinous crime.
उन्होंने कहा हम एक्सपर्ट ट्रेडर हैं, आपकी हम हेल्प कर सकते हैं प्रॉफिट के लिए, इन सब चीज़ के लिए। तो उन केस में उन्होंने मुझे कुछ आईडीज़, कुछ अकाउंट्स दिखाए कि हाँ इतना प्रॉफिटेबल है, ये है समथिंग। देन उन्होंने मुझे कुछ अपने जो उनके हेड होंगे उन्होंने टेलीग्राम का आईडी दे दी। देन टेलीग्राम से मेरी चैट स्टार्ट हुई। उन्होंने कहा ठीक है आपको कितना स्टार्ट करना है, मिनिमम अमाउंट 5000 जो भी है। तो अराउंड करते करते मैंने उन्हें अराउंड 1,40,000 पे कर दिया। तो बीच में उन्होंने मुझसे कुछ चेक और फीस मांगी थी। तो फिर मुझे माइंड में स्ट्रक किया कि नहीं ये एक तरीके से फ्रॉड हो गया।
So let's understand how a person is lured by criminals to invest. Telegram. The famous messaging app is the medium of choice of swindlers. When the victim joins Telegram, they are made part of a crypto investment group without consent. Then, using guerrilla marketing techniques, victims are made to believe that making huge profits via investing is mere few clicks away. Once the person is convinced, they are provided with a link which will direct them to fraudster's website. Looking at the website, the victims are assured that there is no foul play because crypto exchanges like Binance are used to make investments. When the victim moves on to make final investment, they are directed to the Binance website. Though, there is a loophole which the investors is unaware of. A person need to have a crypto wallet in order to store the purchased coin or cryptocurrency. But the fraudsters have already filled their wallet details on the crypto exchange in order to take away the purchase made by the victim. The victim is still unaware of the fact that the cryptocurrency purchased is not with them, but it has been taken away by the fraudsters. Once the first transaction is made, fraud keeps happening on the loop and the investor is made to repeatedly invest by being given a false picture of how their money keeps on growing with each purchase. The victim continues to track their investment on the fraudster's website, but the purchased asset is not with them. And when it comes to withdrawal, the fraudsters seek more money in the name of withdrawal fee and taxes. And finally, the website disappears and the victim is left with nothing in the end. The Cybercrime Cell of Delhi Police has also taken cognizance of these financial frauds. Several accounts have been tracked and traced by the police.
Delhi Police is investigating such cases before also, but this is a new modus operandi which is coming up where the people who are looking for investigation, investing the money, they are being approached through Telegram app. Otherwise, there were cases earlier also where the people are duped in the name of investment in cryptocurrencies. So we are onto it and we'll definitely crack it down.
As per Delhi Police, the origin of these crimes are mainly from countries like China and Hong Kong. Delhi Police has maintained that the fraudsters are using proxies to dupe Indian nationals. According to investigation agencies, Chinese citizens of firms are involved in most of these scams and malpractices. As per cyber experts in India, the money extracted by these fraudsters could be used for terror financing and money laundering. They also flagged off the untenable role of the dragon.
We got many such complaints especially from south of India and then Maharashtra. Now it started in northern side as well. But it is really difficult to investigate in such cases because most of these people are hidden behind VPNs. Their websites are hosted out of India, mostly in China and other Russian countries. And eventually they were used in money laundering operations or probably terrorist funding and many other illegal activities.
As per NCRB's latest data, there is an uptick in economic offences in India, as well as a rise in cyber crimes. In fact, fraudsters are resorting to newer modus operandi to dupe people. First, via Chinese loan apps, and now the Telegram has become a go-to place for these fraudsters. The need of the hour is to implement the cyber laws in a more stringent manner, and also the people need to understand about these financial frauds. In pursuit of quick and easy money, a lot of lives are being lost, and in fact the money extracted by these fraudsters is being used against India. This is Yash Goel with video journalist Narayan Singh and Vikas Rawat for CNN News 18.
Namaste and welcome to this edition of The Right Stand. I'm Anand Narsimhan. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to train the spotlight towards a case that has emerged from Mumbai's Dharavi this evening and ask this question: does this merit what the family is alleging as love jihad or induced conversion? Marriage